Hey, hello. How are you? Today will unfortunately be a little bit of a shorter video because as you can probably hear, my voice is not here. So I had a bit of a cough and it seems to have caused my voice to go baritone. Well, I thought this would be a great opportunity to actually dive back into architecture for iOS apps and talk about open sourcing a architecture which I had mentioned previously in two videos. I kind of rushed those two videos, and I kind of proposed a certain architecture, and after that I realized, look, it'd be best to set up an open sourcing project for it, and I put that together. I've created a project which has all of the parts. It has the presentation, the domain layer, and the services layer, these three parts that clearly define certain rules about what goes where and how it works. Makes it really easy to just put things together, even simple apps. Having this kind of a template to start from will give you something to work from when you're building these applications, even simple stuff. So I'm going to put the link to the repository in the description. I'm going to share this around this video. So if you're watching this, I've shared this on Reddit. I've shared this on this video on Twitter and LinkedIn, a few other places. So the open sourced project is on GitHub. I wanted to host my own Git server because I don't really want Microsoft to take my code and to train their AI models on it. But I thought that, let's do that for now. It's easy access. Anybody can have a look at it, do PRs, all that kind of stuff, just to manage. So if you are interested in looking at this, jump on. This is really just started right now. So I have just started this probably about, I actually did the project, but I've just started open sourcing it about a week ago. So this is going to be an evolving project and hopefully get some cool, input and feedback from this video and from the actual repository itself. So let's dive in. Let me walk you through this and hopefully my voice isn't going to disappear completely before the end of this video. All right, guys, let's do it. Let's explore this solid architecture for iOS apps. And then later, maybe in a few weeks, I'll do the same thing for Android. Okay, let's do it. Let's go. All right, hello. So we're here at the first part of this project. This is essentially the use cases, right? So the use cases sit in the domain layer. So the first part we'll look at is the domain, because that is the core, that is the center of what the app does. Everything else is like essentially should be a reusable system, a reusable part of something else. So you can basically take the idea is that you could take the presentation layer and the majority of it could be pulled out without, could be use a different domain layer, and could use a different services layer. So the idea is that the services and the presentation are very tight, very highly decoupled. So the presentation doesn't have any idea what's going on behind the scenes. It only connects to the domain, and the domain uses a number of services to perform the business logic. So the domain is the business domain. That is the language of the app itself. It's what the use cases do. It's what the state has for the app, and what we essentially represent in terms of errors. So if something goes wrong, we notify these. So the domain, these are domain errors. And these domain errors then get propagated up to the presentation layer. So let's go through this one by one, right? So we have errors. Obviously, things can go wrong, right? In the domain layer, the way that we handle most errors is we do try catch blocks, and then when we catch an error, we present it into the app error state. So the app state here, right? And the app global state controller has an app state and an error state, right? Error subject. In this case, we're using combine to represent streams of information which are picked up by the presentation layer. So we have this error subject, which tells us when there's an error, and an alert, which is it's an alert that then goes to the presentation layer and presented however I want. It's in a notification, really. It should be a notification subject, but I've called it an alert, as in it alerts you to something. It alerts you to something that is important. So these are the only two message queues that we use for sending information. The rest is essentially through state management, right? So the state, although it gets sent to the presentation layer in a message queue using current value subject. It's not used as a list. It's not used like an alert or error stream of information. It's just this is the current state, right? Whereas this is a pass-through subject. So current value means that you can basically pick this up and then go, well, this is the current state that it's in. Now, our global state controller, right? We have error, we have state, and we have use cases, right? In the state, we have our global state controller, which is, in this case, we do have a singleton. It represents the global state, and this shared global state controller is then fed into the domain layer. So let's look at the domain class first, right? The domain class has a state controller, right? And use cases. Now, in terms of what we want for the domain is the only thing really that should be a singleton. Now I'll explain why. I think that's probably something we could fix, where the global state controller shouldn't be a singleton. Right? It should be accessed through the domain. And in this case, I think we have our state controller as paths and dependencies. So we have our domain. In here, we pass in the state controller and the use cases. So the business logic is made up of two parts. It's made up of the state and the use cases. And the use cases are the things we do. We have the domain key, which is like a persistence layer, like a local persistence layer that we want for the domain. It's not a database in the sense, like, I mean, it can be a database depending on how we want to support it. Currently, it uses temporary store or temporary as in you can delete the app and it clears it, right? It's a temporary store for domain data. We then access the use case by type, so we actually pass in the type and it returns the one that we've got registered in the domain. And then we have this for preview state. Preview state is essentially in Swift UI, you have a preview, and this is the state that you get for that preview state, right? It's a static variable. It makes it easy to access the state for for previews. Really, that's it. And when we have dependencies in this case, what we want to do is we pass in our state in the dependencies and use cases. We don't pass in the use cases, but really look, I mean, let's do this right. Let's go dependencies dot use cases, right? Users cases. Let's just fix that, right? State let use cases use users, and here we'll just pass in use cases, and that's use cases instance. Okay, so here we got a problem. I think we need to pass in the state controller. The problem here is that you need to configure the instance with the state controller. Look, that is an issue and it can be fixed, right? There's some weird stuff. Configure instance, app state use cases, state controller, register use cases. No, this is where we register a use case. All right, so this can be fixed. This is something I'm still working on. This dependency probably can be done in a better way, where we actually pass in the use cases here, but then configure them inside the domain. So after the use cases passed, then we pass in the state controller. It makes more sense. I think this was just done because I hadn't actually figured out. I wasn't sure which way I wanted to go, but I think it's best to pass this in as a dependency. And not use, it creates an instance, not create an instance, but create in the initializer, but pass it as a dependency. I really want to fix that now that I've seen it. And the next one, let's move on to state, right? So we have app state, which is the state that we have of the app, and we have global state. And this basically represents whatever the current state is of our application. In app state and global state is the global state. This could be other things that we would have that are not necessarily app related. They could be this does not have anything to do with the services or functionality that sits outside of the domain. So this is only for the domain state. So app state, we could say that could be the current view, whether it's in a single scene or multi-scene, whether it's, whether we've got timers in our app. So this is the actual app, but say we have some other data that we want for other views. We'd here we like a var at like user state, right? And like that, and then we'd have user state, and that would be the state of the user, right? That we have within the application. So really the app state is the state of the app function, not the whole state that is used by the domain, right? And then we have our use case state, which is a protocol. So if you want to have a state for a specific use case, then you would implement this. It's just a way to identify that again, it's a hashable, equatable. We could do something with use case state here. And then we have our global state controller, which we talked about a little bit earlier. This is the coolest bit, I think. We have a really nice sequential thread safe update, right? For state, whenever we write a new state, it does all this. It is not the fastest that we could optimize it, but because a lot of this is used for general applications that run on SwiftUI, I haven't noticed any serious performance issues, because we're not doing optimized code in the domain. If you have a service that, for instance, say you want to render things or you want to build functionality that needs to be optimized, that's closer to the platform, that would probably go in the service. Well, that will go on the service, right? So again, the domain layer is for the user functionality at high level to exist. This would be like the scripting language part of it, right? The stuff that you kind of step through. For instance, if we have a use case, so we have use cases here. We have an app state use case as an example, and then I'll show you this later. But what the use cases are, for instance, you would have a function here. App state would have a user account use case. If this was, say, for instance, the app's a user account use case, we would then have func login user with. So that's the thing that you use in the app, login user. It's completely service agnostic. So by login, you could do a login with mock service. You could do it with Firebase. It's kind of like, this isn't completely agnostic to any functionality that is represented in the service. It is just what the user wants to do, and you do it for the user. The way that we have it, we register use cases in a use case container, and then we have our use cases list here. So in this example, we have one. We register the app state use case, and you might be wondering, well, how do you put in certain dependencies for mock or live data or different test environments? So when you register a app state use case, in this case we have the state controller. When we register them, we have this essentially was a use case. We have access to the global state, right, which is the state control. So if we wanted to pass in a test state controller, we would then initialize use cases with the state controller, right? Use cases, you would initialize it with a test global state controller, right? This would be then a protocol. And the protocol, like, we would pull that out. So if I haven't had that case yet where you're testing specific use cases, but you could do that, right? So we would make global state controller, state controller protocol, and then the use cases would take that and pass it in, and that would fix the issue for testing. So a lot of the tests that we would do would be more on the services layer, and I'll explain that a bit later. So the next one, we've got the use case bridge, which allows use cases to talk to each other. So if you have one use case that needs to perform something else, then you can do it. Like me and people that have worked on apps before have run into this issue where how do you get logic that is not in the presentation layer or view model to call other logic that it may be is required to be called. So say for instance, in the login use case, you might want to do something that is done by another use case, but you want to try and keep some separation between them. And so what this is the use case bridge is for. It means it asks to see if there is a use case of a certain type. If there's not, you gotta gotta safely respond to that and say, well, this use case doesn't exist. We'll skip this part. We'll have to gracefully exit, right? So it's a way to protect you from like creating too much coupling between use cases by forcing you to think about it by creating a bridge. Now, it does happen, but it doesn't happen very often. So you do want to allow it, but you want to make sure that people think about it before they jump in and start connecting, use cases all over the place. Because the reason that it's there is that because I ended up finding that there were many cases where things were being reproduced just to keep segregation between use cases, and they were very, very like it was the same code. You had to they say don't repeat yourself. There you go. That's what it's for. So next one, after the use case container, you've got use case bridge, use cases, and these are all of our use cases, which I've mentioned again, and you can access them. And here, let's jump out of the domain and jump into the services layer. And the services layer, I'll give you an example, right? So services, let's see, services here exist again in a service provider class, right? Services provider. And use cases basically ingest as dependencies these services. So I'll find app state use case. So you have this dependency here, and then you would just go services provider, I think. Yep, this class one we'll go next. Oops, we're gonna go here. We've got init. So let's say we've got like a persistence service, right? We want a var persistence service. Now this persistence service is a protocol, right? Here, what we do is we go services as a persistent service. We got services provider dot persistent service. And if we go here, we have this as a static var. And what I've set up in this case is we have two sets. Right? We have the mock service, and we have the live service. Now, mock is basically, I know this service is required. Let's just make it so that we can use it to simulate or to mock up that functionality. So you say at the start, you haven't written all this code, but you want to get stuff up and running, right? So you just create a persistent service that just prints out a message when you want to save some data or when you just want to store some data. And that's what mock could start off as, right? Live. When it's live, this is like you switch it off and you switch it to live. In this case, what we do have is we would have SwiftArc, and we want to manage schemes by adding another scheme. And the other scheme would have, let's look for our app. Domain, utilities is configuration, right? So we have mock, use mock true, right? So we'd have in this configuration, manage schemes, we'd add a new scheme. Well, let's do a new scheme now, right? There's a few things I'm finding out here. So we do mock SwiftArc, right? And in mock SwiftArc, this new scheme, why does it have a different icon? We have SwiftArc. Oh, I maybe want to do, because this is just the, all right. No, we want to let's manage the schemes. Let's delete this one and duplicate. We'll delete this one. We'll delete this, and then we'll want to just, I think, duplicate it. Can we do that? New scheme, manage schemes. I want to duplicate this scheme. Here we go. Duplicate. Yay. So I want a copy of SwiftArc. We want this as mock SwiftArc. All right. So this should be better. It still has the same icon. Let's edit it. All right. That's weird. I duplicated it, but it's got different stuff. Anyway, so what happens here is when we have the configuration, when we specify the configuration, we need to specify this as the mock. And to do that, to set up the configuration for mock, we would go in and we would edit this scheme. Unless it's target. No, I think it's scheme. Edit this one, debug, executable diagnostic options, arguments, info, build configuration. Wait a second. No, that's right. What was it? I know that I know there was a setting here for the configuration for development. SwiftArc test, SwiftArc, mock SwiftArc. That's interesting. We have different targets here that aren't represented in our scheme. Let's see, this is shared. This is SwiftArc project. Shared, maybe. Why is this not appearing in our targets? I think, that's right. It was actually, as a separate target. Manage schemes. I think it was actually as a separate target. Sorry, not a separate scheme, but a separate target. Let's delete this, and then let's duplicate this. Duplicate as rename. Okay. Swift arc. I know we call that. Right, so I think we have. No. We'd have to also rename this. Manage schemes. Rename. This one. All right. So if this, and in here, in this one here, signing capabilities, info, we would need to set up the configuration, I believe. Is it configuration? In here, no. Build settings, configuration, all, maybe all combined, all configuration. Config. Resource tags, info, bundle version, build phases, build rules. Oh dear. I think I'm getting sidetracked here. Maybe it's in this project. Based on configuration file. There we go. Debug should run. There, this is it. Here we go. Mock should run mock. Yeah, I found it. It's like, you know what? It's like a PhD. That's really all you need to do is like have a PhD in Xcode to know where these things are. They keep moving them too. So in here in mock we'd have mock, but then we'd have a SwiftArc. We'd have production, right, for release, and for debug we would have staging or development. I think we go. Yeah, we just make development. Okay, so what you can do is when you actually do builds, you can provide this configuration. So if we wanted to do another release debug, we would want another one, say it's like final release or production release for command line builds, right? And then we would make that production. So this would be staging, and then we'll add another one that makes a production. Cool. So back to where we were. We were looking at persistent service and setting that up inside an example of app state use case, right? So here we would have persistent service, and there we go. And then this use case, right? We want to use the use case. If we run the mock build, if we run the mock build, we get every service that's running the mock service, right? But if you want to run tests, or if you want to run a very specific service, you can then inject this one directly, right? So you can create an instance of this use case, right? You could go app state use case to init, and then you go dependencies, and you can create your own. Like in this case, let's just go var test app state use case was dot init, right? We'll go app state use case. In this one, actually, we don't need that. Let's get that out of here. We shouldn't need to use step control like this. global state control like that. Let's get rid of that. We should just initialize with the services. We don't want the app state controller to go in to a use case, and the reason for that is because we do, but we don't want to be able to actually. We do want it, but not in this case, not right now. There's no need for it. So persistence, because most of the stuff that we'll want to do is basically we'll want to access that from the domain, and I'll explain that in a minute. So the persistence, let's with the dependencies and in it the persistent service. So here we go, say services provider dot live, live dot. Let's jump in there. Live persistent service static var. This should be private. This should be like that, so we can access that. Right, so if you wanted to use the live version, you do that. Now, if you wanted to use your own instance, right, like a persistent service, you can just pass it in through here and then test it. So that's the way that it's designed to work. If we wanted, say, a variable, right, we wanted to have a variable that we want to edit, then we would pass in, say, something like, say we have, let's see, we have like a app active is bool, and we call the reason these are streams, right? Save publisher bool, and we wanted to find out, right? Actually, no, this isn't a view model. Sorry, I got mixed up here. So if we wanted to edit, we wanted to update with the global state controller, we would then again put that in here, state controller. We'd have, domain dot shared dot state control. So that's how we'd pass it in. And I think that's what we really had before anyway. So let's just put it back in there and take out the persistent service. In this case, global state controller, when we initialize it, we have, it should actually be in dependencies, not here. It should be dependencies. And we have state controller. Controller, and then we pass that in through here. So we have the controller. Whoops. Back, and we'll go state controller domain dot shared dot state control, like that. Now you'll notice we're passing in use case. I think a use case, like actually, I think a use case in general of dependency environment. Actually, use case control always has state controller. All right. That's right. I don't even remember this code exactly. You always pass in the state controller separate like this. And the reason for that is because it's used. Actually, no, we could probably do it in the dependencies in it. But for now, let's leave it like this. The reason for that is because I wanted to enforce the rule that every use case has a state controller, and that you access the state directly via key paths. Now, the reason for that is if you wanted to set it, you wanted to set the new value, you'd have to set it via a key path. So it just makes it easier to manage the updating of the global state. See, global state here is a getter setter. Instead of in your use case typing state controller dot state dot whatever the value is, you just go state dot, right? It's just to simplify the text. So I'll explain what I mean here. Instead of going state controller dot state dot app dot value equals x. In this case, we define our state and then the lens, right? And the reason for the lens is basically so you can easily access whatever location you want within your state. So if you have an app use case, right, you'd have a state that's in the global state that is specific to this use case, so it's easy to access. So instead of writing this out, we would just go, let's see, was it lens? No, the lens is for this. The lens is for the sub value. So it'd be basically now state dot. Is here bar state. So got a bar state and extension. Local publisher is something else. I'll explain it later, but in this case, let's go state dot app state. Oh, sorry, state dot value, right? So before it was like, instead of doing state controller dot state dot app dot value, we now just do it. And that's what these utility functions are for. A local publisher is just a way you can listen to changes to values for the state. Okay, so there's a little bit of complexity in there, but it's designed to make it easy for a use case to access state just for its own. But you can still access other parts of this global state if you need to. But again, just like the bridge, it's designed so you contain your use case state in this use case that you want to use, in the use case you want to use. Finally, and is the presentation layer. Now, in the presentation layer, we have, a number of shared components, UI components, text field, button, toggle, different examples, some styles that you can put in here, constants for values, your gradients, toggle styles, formatting, font, color, constants just to help you manage your app-specific values. And so it's like let's call it like a design guide, shared components. It's really a palette of components, a palette of colors, different utility views that I've come across in the past. Ways in which we can actually set up activity overlay. So I'll go in. That's a whole other thing. You can actually set up a very simple overall activity overlay whenever something is blocking. And then we just got various extensions. Now, these presentation objects, right, are part of just the shared components, and we do have a view model. I don't actually have a sample view, but I do have a view model here. I should just put in a sample view. So what we can do is we got presentation layer. We just go app. So we've got alert, navigation. We have also got navigation control. We've got sign up, just examples. Main menu, another example. So let's just call our new. Well, let's call it new file, like a new folder, new group. Let's call it main menu, right? Oh, so views. Let's call it views. So this is where our views are, and we'll go new group. And we'll call it main menu. And in this case, what we do is we create two files. We create a Swift file, which is the main menu view model, right? And then we create a new file, which is a Swift UI file, view. This is the main menu. It's called main menu view. Why not? And then the main menu view model is a class. It's a main menu view model, which is a view model, right? And every view model is an observable object. There we go. It's an observable object. And the idea is that here you have the same process. You have dependencies, right? And in the main extension, main menu view model, we have in the same way that the services, in the use cases have dependencies, we do the same thing here. We've got struct dependencies. Here you don't ingest, in this presentation, you don't ingest the services. You never ingest the services, right? Because the services are platform specific. This is where you take the use cases. So the view model only functions as a way for the presentation to connect with the use cases. So this is what the view model does. The view model is the bridge between the view and the use case and the state. Right. So in this case, in this situation that we have here, we'll just go like app app active, right? Because I wanted to show you app active before. In this case, it's a safe publisher. And the reason I'm calling it a safe publisher, I'll just show you in a second, because I've taken out the error. It just means that it will never error. If you look at safe publisher, it's just a type alias. It's whatever the type is, it's never error. It just makes it easier to managing errors in publishers is a huge headache. It's much better to do it with in the domain and to manage it as exceptions. This ensures that all of the information that's coming through is always safe. That's why I call it safe. It's never errors. There is no error. And here in the dependencies, we have like a static let. Let's just call it dependencies. Now the reason we have it like this, right, is let's call it default. Default dependencies standard. Called standard dependencies. And the reason for this, right, is so you can actually test your view model. In this case, what we're going to do, this is the standard. And the standard goes domain dot share dot state controller dot publisher. In this case, we want the app active, right? So we go that app dot is active. And what happens now? So let's go app state. Let's go to our app state and add var is active bool equals false. So now we have connected value from the global state to this view model, right? Published. Var is active bool. And look at this. We go dependencies dot active, and we go is active dot. Well, because this is a combined publisher, we just go assign to is active, right? I think this is meant to be different. No, it's like that. Right? No. Where was the and symbol? Like this. Oh, like this. Oh. Oh, we gotta set. There we go. Yeah. Okay. So this is what happens whenever in our global state is active changes. We have now hooked up this value in our view model. And the great thing about this is if we wanted to completely separate the use case, right, from the presentation layer, we don't have to do anything but except change this and say adjust false dot to was it it's publisher. Let's see as November, just so we go publishers published just, or is it the constant no publishers published value publisher dot the dot just, is it count? Count publishes the number of elements received from the upstream count, right? Say publisher dot. Let's go. Can we do assign append breakpoint? Where was it? Was it once output init. So I have to look at the reference of how this is set up because I need to create an instance of it. Okay, so I'm gonna do this somewhere else for now. I'll leave this here. I'll do this in the preview, right? So let's go out. Let's just jump this. Okay, so we have this value. Let's jump into our main menu view. We have our preview. Now the thing is with these previews, I actually prefer. We have a main menu view. Let's create. We add our observed object. object var model equals main menu view model dot init, which is the default, right? So if we wanted to go into the initializer and give it the assignment, we go dot standard. So, but whenever by default, our presentation layer will have a use case that is just the standard one. So in this case, main menu view model, we don't need dependencies. We'll just go to .init. This is the default value. Okay. Now, but what about if we want to test the value, right? We don't want to have like the default. In that case, what you would do is you'd go view model or model equal main menu view model dot init. I think we have to do return here. I'm not sure how. Yep, return. Dependencies, and we go dot init active, right? So this is our active publisher. Active publisher. So now we can test our preview. We can test our main view completely disconnected from the use case by just creating a app active publisher, which is, let's see, we can make it. It's a safe publisher. Bool equals .init. Now, this is where any publisher, because this is where I think we have to go to .just. .just. It wasn't .just. Where do we wait? Wait. Do I have to import combine? That's why it wasn't working. Okay. That's why it wasn't working. We have to go .just. Surely just .just false, right? Type safe publisher. There's no remember .just. .to was .to any publisher. Any. Okay, let's go. Publishers .just any publisher .just. Where was it? .just. We'll have to search the documentation in the combined documentation. I've done this once. Well, not once. I've done it many times, but I haven't done it in a while. So let's go just. Where do we find just? Let's find just. Should be in combine. Publisher that emits. Oh, is it? Wait a second. I think it should just be capital. Right? Oh, what? Did I just do that? Did I do that just wrong like that? False. Yeah, can I convert value of just bool to specified say publisher, also known as any publisher? Okay, there we go. The raise any publisher. That's what we do. In some ways, if you know reactive programming, then RX Swift is much better because you don't do any of this nonsense raise to any publisher. But SwiftUI is tightly coupled to combine. Good on you, Apple. And combine and SwiftUI are not open source, but RX Swift is. Okay, enough with the whinging. Let's get on with the job. All right. So what we have done here is in our preview, we can do this, right? The other way we can do it, right? So this, when you're building up a view, right, you essentially can do it this way, right? This is just an example. I wouldn't use just because it's just a single value. You would use something like a timed value to see how things change over time in your preview. And in this case, this is how you do it in main view that connects to a view model. So in this case, there we go. If model dot is active, we go if model, and then what we do, like what I would do here, right, is actually you go task, set up as async task, and you can actually do async stuff, and let's do this, and I'll show you what I mean. Is we have this publisher, we can actually set this up. We could set this up as an object that listens, like collects values, right? So we'd have it as a safe active publisher, right? And what we would do is like app active subject. And what I'll do is I'll go like this. Current value subject bool equals .init and go false, right? So this will actually just be generic. I think I need to do never. Yeah, never. And then we just go like this. We go app active subject dot erase function, right? Which is bool. Okay, cool. We have this publisher here, pass that into our model, and now we have the subject. So if we wanted to test stuff, we go app active subject dot sends a value, no, send completion value. The value wrapped in the subject, published as a new value whenever it changes. That's right. Okay, equals true. And then we'll just go task dot sleep in for 5 seconds, right? For 1 second, and then go true, false, sleep for 1 second. So this is the magic of separating the services in the domain layer from the presentation layer. I can just test in a silo all of the presentation stuff. I can then set up mock data in my services that then go into the use case, and the use case should work with mock or live. It doesn't matter. Like your service, like authentication service, can mock up, sleeping and waiting and saving and do whatever it needs to do to log in, right? The use case doesn't care. It just it uses a service to log into Firebase. It uses a service to log into a custom SSO, whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. It is completely agnostic. The use case is agnostic to the underlying service, right? And the presentation layer is agnostic to anything that gives it data. And in this case, it's just it's the use case is there because that's how the app will flow in the real world. In a preview, we just test it how we want. In our test cases, we would test it however we want. So the preview really helps us understand 2 seconds how it looks, right? So it's currently paused. We just go color dot green. I'll just make it a Z stack. So we'll push it out, Z stack. I don't think we need it color green. I don't think else we need a Z stack, but because this is the same view. Now, somebody in a previous video commented about the fact that you cannot, like that you can return a color, right, in an if statement. Sorry, you can return 2 different views in an if statement. And that's actually not true. And I'll show you what I mean. Look at this. If I have color or a color, that's fine. But if I make this color or a, that's fine. If I have a color or a VStack, let me try to build it. It'll fail. Actually, it's failing for other reasons. Maybe. Okay, now I'm confused. Anyway, Colcan try throw. Where is this? Where did it fail? Async, but marked with an await. Main menu view. What? Okay. Sorry. Let's do this first. What? Oh, that's weird. Oh, because it's a macro. There we go. Try. Goes back again. Await. Try await. Await. Try. That's fine. That's another thing about macros. It doesn't seem to autocomplete. Let's see, does that build? It did build. I was wrong. Oh, well, there you go. Maybe that works now, but I don't remember it working fast. Anyway, maybe it always worked, and I was just wrong. Okay. Color dot, and this is push out views, so I'm sure I tested this. What's happened here? Okay. I'm sure I tested this and it didn't work. Okay, so build. Okay, and then let's just run the preview. And because we're preview, we're doing async stuff here. It should set this to true. Let's stop it. Stop. Okay, build succeeded. And we have a preview. True, false, true. Why? Do I have to actually keep a reference to it? I'm not even initializing it with a view model. Main menu view. View model. So model equals our model. All right, so now we're passing this custom model. Yeah, there we go. Voila. And then see? So I'm able to test my view. Goes, and if I want to change something, it'll, send true. If I want to do anything here, I can simulate data coming through the view in this task. And I can make this a separate function somewhere else. And but guys, that's it, really. The idea is that we have our main menu view model, which connects and performs functionality related to data from the domain, right? But the view itself should be independent from that data. But then we have this logic here, which may perform certain functions that we want to, say for instance, we have this data and we may want to format it a certain way, then we do it in the view model. Binding between the domain and the view. Guys, I think that's it. I think 50 minutes and my voice has finally had it. I will share this. Again, check out the link in the description for this open sourced set of classes. Yeah, I'll just keep working on it, expanding it. Like I said, in this video, I found a few things just now that could be improved. So we'll do that. Let's go. I'll see you guys in the next video, and hopefully by then my voice should be back. Bye.